Mr. Jimenez takes his seat, we'll get started. But then Larry gets up and walks away. All right. Kind of like herding cats tonight. Okie dokie. It is now 5:51. I will call this special meeting and study session to order. Again, at 5:51, this Tuesday, February 18th. So there you go. Okay, and then Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Kelly, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Please rise. Right hand over your heart and begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, roll call, please.
Council members Belden.
Here.
Jimenez.
Here.
Spicer.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Kelly. And Mayor Shevlin.
Here. And public input, are there any requests for public input on items on our agenda this evening? Not seeing any, I will close that, and then we will move right into the discussion. Discuss and provide direction on citywide lighting, landscaping, and parks maintenance assessment districts. And Buffy is going to take that.
Well, good evening, Mayor Shevlin and members of the City Council. Thank you for your time this evening. As you know, we've been talking about our assessment districts during our budget discussions each year, specifically because we've been running deficits in our assessment districts. And staff has been working with NBS, our consultant, to evaluate our districts. So tonight's presentation is really a high-level overview, a 30,000-foot overview of our districts. First, to provide council with a refresher on our existing districts and talk about the issues with those districts, and then to provide a high-level overview of a possible new citywide district and what that entails. Overall, this is an informational study session, but we would like to get your input and feedback as we go through, and if you have any questions, please let us know. Ray Bowman, our Deputy Administrative Services Director, will be presenting this evening. And as we go through, again, please just let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Buffy. Hi. Good evening, Mayor Shevlin and members of City Council. Tonight's study session will provide an update on the city's lighting and landscape and parks maintenance assessment districts. We've made copies of the presentation and the engineer's report, and those are the items in front of you today. These are those. And like Buffy mentioned, we'll be discussing information on the assessment districts, the work that we've done so far, and get some feedback. So to start, Council has done a great job at addressing the city's fiscal challenges over the years, and as you're aware, the assessment districts have been fiscally unsustainable. And the purpose of the presentation this evening is to discuss our existing lighting and landscape maintenance district and park maintenance district, provide council with an overview of a proposal for a new citywide assessment district that fully covers the cost of maintaining our lighting, landscaping, and parks, provide potential timelines and options, and of course seek City Council's input, guidance, and answer any questions that Council might have regarding the proposed assessment district. Again, we don't necessarily need a decision this evening, but we want to present the information, answer questions, and obtain feedback. I'd like to first provide some background on our existing assessment districts. An assessment district is a special area within a city where property owners agree to pay assessments in order to fund specific improvements that directly benefit that area. And the city currently has two assessment districts, the Park Maintenance District and the Lighting and Landscape Maintenance District. The boundaries of these districts are the same as the boundaries of the city. So first, let's talk about the Park Maintenance District, or PMD. PMD was established in the 90s, and unlike the Lighting and Landscape District, PMD allows for an annual CPI increase, which has helped to keep better pace with increasing costs. However, CPI has been as low as 0.87% in the last 5 years and has not always kept pace with the city's increasing costs.
God bless you.
which include the costs of utilities, maintenance of park grounds, playground equipment, and park restrooms. When PMD was first established in the 90s, the assessment rate was $8.25 per dwelling unit, and it's currently at $15.24 per dwelling unit. Next, the Lighting and Landscape Maintenance District, or LLMD. This was established in the 90s as well. However, the revenues for LLMD have essentially remained unchanged for over 30 years, and an increase to the assessment rate for CPI is not allowed. However, as we know, costs have consistently increased each year, and the assessments from this district are used to cover the costs of maintaining the city's street lights, traffic lights, trees, and landscaping. The last bullet on this slide includes an example to show what the estimated rate would be if we had been able to increase the rate by CPI each year, at least since 1993 when it was established. And as you can see, the rate of $56.23 would be approximately $127.61 per dwelling unit at this time. Either, yeah.
Go ahead.
With your mic.
I think you gave the CPI, or not the CPI. Did you give the per dwelling unit for the
Oh, for
lighting
for
when
the
it first started?
Oh, when it first started, it's when it first started, it's $56.23 per dwelling unit. It has not changed
Oh,
since
gotcha.
then.
Right,
Yes.
thanks. Perfect. That's why. Thank you.
No
And
problem.
I'm just curious, had it been increased
Yes.
each time and gotten up to 127.61, would that currently cover the
It
cost?
would keep better pace at covering the cost, but similar to PMD, increases in costs have just outpaced CPI.
So we'd still be in the hole.
Correct.
I have a question on the cost per dwelling unit. So an apartment building with five, small apartment building with 5 units in it, so it would be 5 times 56.23 for the property?
Correct. If it's a multifamily, the current assessment on LLMD is based on per dwelling unit. It would be times 5.
Okay,
Correct.
and the single-family dwelling would be the 56?
Correct.
63. Okay.
Yes.
Want to make sure.
Yeah, of course. Great questions. Okay, so now that we've taken a high-level look at our 2 assessment districts, I'd like to tie them back to our financial principles. As part of City Council's sound fiscal management, Council approved the Financial Resiliency Plan in 2018, centered on 5 core principles. We've completed all but one, which is tremendous. And this evening's discussion will focus on principle number 1, which is to protect general fund dollars and minimize subsidies to funds that should be self-sustaining. Replacing the city's existing districts with one citywide district that's designed to cover the full cost of service and eliminate subsidies to the districts achieves FRP principle number 1. As a high-level financial overview, although the PMD allows for annual CPI increases, LLMD again does not. However, both districts have experienced cost increases in all categories, and on this slide is a chart showing U.S. inflation over the past 30 years. In fact, as you can see, inflation has significantly increased and spiked over the last 3 decades, and highlighting 2022 and 2023 alone, CPI changed by 13.3%, and LLMD assessments have not changed to keep up with these CPI increases. This slide here is a simple view of the combined costs and revenues for the existing districts. It shows a 5-year financial overview of the costs of both districts. Over time, you'll see that costs continue to increase. So the first row in this table shows the total combined costs to maintain the districts. The second row shows the city's required funding, also known as the general benefit. The city is required to pay this amount each year, which represents the cost of the benefits enjoyed by the public as a whole. And I'll discuss general benefit in further detail later in the presentation. But going back to the table, the third row shows how much the city collects each year from assessments, and the last row shows the deficit each year. As you can see from this chart, the deficit has been growing over time. I wanted to include this slide that shows the costs of the districts and the assessment revenues. As you can see, over time, the gap between cost and revenues have been growing. So given these annual deficits, staff worked extensively with NBS to design and propose a solution, which is a combined assessment district that covers the costs of maintaining the city's lighting, landscaping, and parks. NBS is an independent third-party consultant currently contracted as the city's annual district administrator, so they're familiar with our districts. And as council will recall, we also worked with NBS on the most recent water and sewer rate adjustments. The calculations that NBS provided were prepared by a certified engineer and were based on the proportionate special benefit derived by each parcel. The goal for this combined district is to design the rates so they comply with state law and are sufficient to cover all costs to maintain and operate our street lights, traffic signals, trees, landscaping, and our soon-to-be 9 parks. So in short, rates are designed to eliminate the annual deficit. Also, the rates were designed to be least impactful to the community. We've spent a lot of time working with NBS to design these rates to make sure they're fair, equitable, and least impactful. The assessment rates were designed with the following benefits in mind. Street lighting, trees, landscaping, and parks provide the benefits of improved safety and accessibility, improved aesthetics and livability, as well as economic activity. NBS evaluated these benefits and designed rates by factoring in lot characteristics and land use classifications. As part of the rate design methodology, each parcel was assigned special benefit points, which factors in the parcel's land use, lot size, and park benefit points. And this slide shows the formula for calculating special benefit points. I did want to note that this methodology is in compliance with Prop 218 and state laws. As background, Prop 218 is also known as the Right to Vote on Taxes Act. It was a California ballot proposition that was approved by voters in November of 1996, and this proposition amended the state's constitution to impose requirements for local governments regarding the imposition, increase, or extension of various taxes, assessments, and fees. As noted earlier in the presentation, the city is responsible for costs related to general benefit, which refers to the overall public benefit to the broader community rather than to specific property owners. Based on NBS's engineer's report, the general benefit for the proposed citywide assessment district is 18.75%. In short, property owners will only pay for the special benefit for their property, and the city pays for the general benefits. And the city is also required to pay its fair share of the special benefits on city-owned facilities. There are no exempt properties. And given this methodology, I wanted to go over potential rate increases in each land use category over the next few slides. The first category is residential less than 5 units. There are approximately 8,700 parcels within this category, which includes single-family residential and dwellings consisting of less than 5 units, such as duplexes and triplexes. I would like to note that 98% of single-family homeowners will see an increase of between $100 to $400. This table outlines the number of parcels and the estimated increase in their assessment. So for example, about 5,300 properties will see an increase between $100 and $200. About 2,500 will see an increase between $200 and $300. And about 660 will see an increase between $300 to $400.
Excuse me, can you share again? I'm sure I missed it. Is this annually that they would see the increase, or how does this show up?
Right. So this would be an increase in the first year of the assessment. And later on, we'll also kind of discuss if we were to proceed with this, how we might phase in the assessment, because we also have options there.
How are we going to notify residents that they're going to see an increase in their taxes?
That's a great question. So for this new assessment district to be established, it does have to go out to voters and they have to cast their ballot. So with that, there's an outreach component to it, an education window and an outreach component. And there's a few mechanisms that we can do for that. Of course, the city manager's update, some Monrovia Today, utility bill inserts, updates to the website and social media. So if council decides to go in that direction, we can put together an outreach and community education kind of programs.
This is a 218 process,
Correct.
correct?
It's a 218.
And just out of curiosity, on the residential, this band of increase, what is the charge based on? Is it the value of the property, the square footage of the property?
That's a great
What-
question. For residential less than 5, it's a lot factor, so it's the square footage of the property.
Okay.
So this would be totally different than what we're doing right now, right? Because right now we're by dwelling unit.
By dwelling unit.
So this is no longer by dwelling unit?
It's correct. So
Okay.
it depends on the category, and the engineer's report has additional details. But for residential less than 5, it's the main variable would be the lot factor, which is the square footage. When we get into the multifamily residential over 5, the dwelling unit does kind of factor in, because the assessment for, say, a 10-unit apartment complex would be different to a 100-unit apartment complex.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be really simple.
Oh,
And they decided the rationale behind doing it versus the per lot to this other formula is because,
So NBS, of course, what they do is they do a benefit assessment on each parcel. And so they had to come up with a methodology that was reasonable, equitable, fair, and can be consistently applied. So the data that they utilize, of course, is the secured roll from the county assessor's office, which includes those factors. But I did want to go back to the formula just so we're all clear on this slide. The factors that they use for the calculation are land use points, so they do take into consideration the type of land use category that the property's in, lot factor, which is the square footage of that property, and park benefit points, essentially a benefit point designated for essentially the amount of utilization maybe a property might have as it relates to parks around it.
so a
there's different-
commercial building wouldn't have the same, they wouldn't get many points for park benefit.
Correct, that's correct. They would get a lower park benefit point.
Wouldn't it be fair to have one criteria for everybody, number of dwelling units?
That's definitely, and the current existing assessment districts are based off of that. But NBS, in kind of the rate study that they put together, wanted to factor in, of course, equivalent dwelling unit it's a big factor in terms of kind of figuring out what would be equitable for properties, but also depending on the land use, they wanted to make sure that they could take into consideration the land use type and also the kind of a benefit point designated to properties depending on how much they might use a park or how much they would, I guess, in essence, gain from being in the assessment district.
So right now, whether it's commercial or residential, it's a flat rate per parcel, correct?
It's highly based on equivalent dwelling unit. For commercial properties, for example, for the lighting and landscape maintenance district right now, it would be, they base it on front footage depending on how much of your parcel gets lighting, partial
okay.
lighting, yeah. So
Okay.
it's a little bit more technical right now how they're
Nuanced.
calculating. Yes, yeah. They have benefit zones for the LLMD currently.
If I could add real quick, a few of the additional items that we've undertaken, which really aren't represented in the slides. The current benefit districts and the way they were created and the language used is also reflective of old California law. And when working with NBS, there are certain things that even they questioned of, well, why do we have this? Because you would never include a certain calculation methodology or certain language in a benefit district if you were including it today. So part of what we've asked them to do, in addition to helping us right-size what's the proper amount we need, is let's clean it up and make sure that whatever we do moving forward is also consistent with the laws as it's used today. I think one question we can certainly ask is whether we can stick with the dwelling unit as just a measure of calculation. I think some of the challenges that we see today are things like ADUs and junior ADUs. You now are creating subsequent dwelling units, and perhaps the assessment isn't keeping up as quickly with it. unit, so they tend to be more aligned to the parcel basis, which, hey, if you're the property owner and here's your parcel size, is one of the key factors in determining what that amount will be. I also want to highlight that because we currently have 2 assessment districts, it means we have to go through 2 separate processes for updating and information and certifying what the assessments are every year. Another component of what we're trying to do is kind of wrap them into one in order to make it easier for residents to understand moving forward, but also it's going to lower the costs for administering the assessment districts moving forward. That's another key component for this.
Another question just on the methodology, was it for that special benefits? I think I got confused. I thought it was for understanding how much the city would have to pay as the general benefit, but is that same methodology with how they came up with how much parcel is supposed to pay as well?
Correct.
They used it for both?
Yes,
Oh,
correct.
okay.
Well, so the special benefit points essentially help allocate the assessment to properties that have benefits conferred to them. The general benefit was a different study that NBS had done as part of this engineer's report. So it's outlined in the engineer's report, but it wasn't based on special benefit point. That one was based off of a traffic study, essentially, to see how much general benefit the city should be responsible for based on a traffic study that they had done against traffic generated within the city and pass-through traffic going through the city. So there's a lot of technicalities in this engineer's report. Great question.
Good answer.
And I think we have to say that the effect of it is to create a more fair assessment on a per parcel basis, because we're able to, which we were not able to do back in the day when this assessment district was first formed, we're now able to do a property by property analysis to say, this parcel gets more benefit than these parcels over here, so that the assessment should be different. So it's a fairer way to allocate the cost of the district parcel by parcel, rather than just saying everybody pays the same amount.
And we do that assessment?
Currently, yes, NBS is our assessment administrator.
So, I mean, if we were
Through the
to go, they're the ones that would do this little formula and figure out? Okay,
Correct, and they would send it through the county, yes.
okay, got it.
So if I'm in a district that is 7 blocks away from a park, my assessment would be a lot different than a person that lives close to the park.
For this new assessment district, it would be based off of the land use of the property, how big the property was, and essentially whether it was a residential single-family or multifamily and how many units in a multifamily.
Okay.
So it's not the proximity to the park, it's just whether.
Correct.
Darn, okay. Yeah, I got you. Okay.
Yes, for lighting, landscaping, park maintenance. Correct.
Okay.
Great questions. Okay. The next category is residential 5+, which consists of apartment buildings and multifamily dwellings consisting of 5 or more units. There are approximately 420 parcels within this land use category, and most properties within this category will see an increase ranging from $300 to $800. The increase in this category are largely based on the number of units on each parcel. The next category is non-residential industrial, which consists of parcels used for commercial or industrial purposes, including retail, restaurants, hotels, warehouses, and gas stations. The bottom of this slide does have a more comprehensive list, and there are about 710 parcels in this category. Most properties within this category will see an increase ranging from less than $100 to about $400. The next category is office institutional, which includes parcels used for office and public use, including medical offices, hospitals, and schools. There are about 170 parcels in this category, and most properties within this category will see an increase ranging from less than $100 to $300. And the last category is undeveloped, which consists of parcels with no structure value, such as a parking lot, or parcels with utility lines and towers and communication lines. There are about 430 parcels in this category. Most properties within this category will see an increase ranging from less than $100 to about $300.
Is this a category that includes both residential and industrial properties?
For undeveloped, it's essentially parcels with no structure on them, so kind of big lands that don't have a developed building on them currently.
Okay.
This slide shows the total estimated assessments for each land use category. There are a total of about 10,400 assessable parcels within the city, with a total estimated revenue of $3.5 million. I did want to note that the residential less than 5 category makes up the majority of our parcels at 83%, or approximately 8,700 parcels. This category is expected to generate approximately $2.3 million in revenues each year. Next, I wanted to share some procedural steps with council if this is the direction that we want to continue with. In order to create the assessments, or increase the assessments rather, a new district needs to be established and approved by voters. If that new district is approved, the city's 2 existing districts will go away, and Prop 218 requires the following procedural steps for the formation of a new district. First, council would need to acknowledge the intent to levy, approve an engineer's report, and set a time and place to conduct a public hearing. Second, outreach to the community would be conducted, which includes city manager's update, Monrovia Today, utility bill inserts, and of course, a ballot mailing. City council would also need to vote for city-owned parcels. Next, the city would hold a public hearing, and following that public hearing, ballots would be counted. I did want to note that this is a majority protest vote, and ballots are counted based on the weight of the assessment. Lastly, a resolution declaring results or abandoning proceedings would occur. I did want to note that the existing districts will remain if the new district is not approved. Given these considerations, the combined assessment district is one possible solution that eliminates the city's subsidies, which achieves FRP principle number 1. The proposed district covers the full costs of maintaining the districts. The methodology is substantiated and fair, and it simplifies the existing districts by combining 2 into 1. And also, like Dylan mentioned, there are potential cost and time savings by only having one district to administer. I wanted to summarize a few key takeaways on the slide since I know we went through a lot of information. The existing districts are not fully recouping the costs of maintaining the city's lighting, landscaping, and parks. The city is subsidizing an estimated $1.85 million every year to cover costs, and costs continue to increase. And a potential solution could be a new district that combines both into one and covers the full costs as discussed this evening. So, that said, staff would like to present a few options for council's consideration. And again, we don't need to make any decisions, but here are a few options. Option 1 is to move forward with the proposed combined assessment district targeting the 25-26 tax rolls. Given that timeline, however, it would result in a short window for outreach and implementation. Option 2, which is staff's recommended option, would be to move forward with the proposed combined assessment district, but targeting the 26-27 tax rolls. This would allow more time for outreach and community education. We also have option 3, which would be to leave the existing districts in place and to seek other funding options for the annual deficit. This means we would need to develop a plan to address the annual subsidy. In addition, if council were to direct us to move forward with options 1 or 2, there are some rate options on this slide for your consideration. Assessment rates can be phased in over a number of years if we'd like to, or phased in immediately. We presented a lot of information this evening, and again, we're not looking for specific answers tonight, but we simply wanted to provide council the information, talk about the work that we've done with NBS so far, and if we want to continue, we can make the presentation and the engineer's report available to members of the public on the city website. And we understand that this is the first time you're seeing this information, and it might take time to review, and we can certainly come back for an additional study session if we'd like to take a deeper dive. I did want to let council know that we're moving forward with the annual process for the existing assessment districts, so we'll come back to you in March to initiate those annual proceedings. And that concludes my report. Thank you so much for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have or take any feedback and guidance you'd like to provide.
Questions?
Have you contacted other municipalities to see what process they use when they're approaching a situation like this?
Yeah.
Survey, in other words.
Other neighboring agencies have recently gone out for assessment district balloting. I think Laverne actually went out last year, and I think they went out for 2 assessment districts, and I think one of them passed and one of them didn't. We can certainly take a look at other agencies that have done it. Assessment districts, once they're established, usually stand for quite a bit of time. So, but we can certainly take a look. But every assessment district after Prop 218 has to comply to Prop 218 processes, so those procedures are the same. And essentially, the assessment rates have to be fair, equitable, and can be consistently applied to all properties that are conferred a special benefit by that district.
I have a quick question. As it relates to the annual deficit and option number 3,
Yep.
just for information, when you say seeking out other funding options, what would that even look like?
That's a great question.
And maybe providing that with your next report.
We can certainly take a look at a few mechanisms that the city can take a look at. There's a lot of different funding options we could take a look at, but as an ongoing issue, I think the deficit really does need to be addressed by something that's sustainable and long-term. And so any type of revenue source that we would take a look at this point would need to be something that we can expect to come in every year, because it is to maintain the city's lighting, landscaping, and parks, so.
Edward?
Just one of the issues we have right now is that our CPIs aren't somehow, well, our CPI is inaccurate, it sounds like, right? I don't know how we address that one, but I'd love to know if we need a different index. But does this include an index as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay, it wasn't in there, but it would include,
Correct.
okay, a
It would.
CPI of some sort.
Yes.
And also, can we get a better CPI? Because, I mean, I know there's multiple indexes out there, but I think there's like government construction ones.
Isn't there one that's specifically for Los Angeles County?
Yes.
Well, there is. Yeah, so I think the problem is the CPI changes, because they keep swapping out, like pulling out things that actually increase our costs, but then they take them out to make us all feel better. But am I wrong? Tell me about this.
That's correct, Councilmember Jimenez. The current CPI that we use is a January to January Los Angeles, Long Beach, Anaheim CPI.
What's the base year on that?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because there's various ones for LA County. Some uses the base year 1982.
I think
and-
it's in the 80s.
1982, okay.
Correct. But it really depends, right? CPI is it's a general metric, but of course, the basket of goods here could look really different compared to a basket of goods Long Beach, Anaheim, Los Angeles. It really depends on kind of the maintenance costs that we have, some of our supplies in terms of chemical usage and treatment, items that we've needed for our, maintenance and facilities operations have just increased, and, those don't go by CPI. Sometimes the cost of those cleaning materials and chemical, kind of items and equipment materials just have outpaced CPI. We can, I think the crux of 218 is that it has to be fair, equitable, and consistently applied.
So hypothetically, if we was to go through the Prop 218 process, and it passed, what would the cost still be to the city?
That's a great question.
Oh, thank you.
The assessment, the combined assessment district, as it's proposed now, will cover the full costs of maintaining those districts.
So there wouldn't be no deficit?
There wouldn't be a deficit. The city is still responsible for the general benefit
Yeah.
portion, and of course for our properties, city-owned properties, but
Right.
the assessment would cover the costs outside of that, of course, yes.
Okay.
And that what is it, 18.75 or whatever that
Yes, the
benefit
general
is?
benefit.
When is that taken out? Off the top, or what do we?
That's a great
How do
question.
we use that?
Yes, I guess it would be taken off the top. It wouldn't be part of the calculation for the assessment that's collected from the parcels that benefit in the district.
Okay, so in the calculation, okay. And then the other thing about phasing in over
Yes.
3 years.
Yes.
And that would, obviously, it would provide then by the end of the 3 years, we would be caught up.
Correct. So one of the levers we could take a look at to be kind of, I guess, less impactful to the community is to phase in that assessment over, say, 1 or 2 or 3 years, over a number of years. But you're right, we wouldn't recognize the full kind of recoup of that cost until that final year.
How would we set those amounts?
So we could set those amounts. It would still, the process for 218 would still remain the same, but essentially we could go back to NBS and say, hey, we would like to phase in the rates and maybe do 75% in year 1, maybe 90% in year 2, and then 100 in year 3, and then from then on do the CPI increase. So that's also an option.
If we're talking about phasing, I think a 5-year phase would be maybe preferable in my mind, just because it seems
Well,
like a
that's-
lot of
Yeah.
increase at a time, right? And it's not easy times for people to pay more money.
Right.
Yeah.
But
That's-
still
Absolutely.
going, for instance, 5 years, you still running that deficit. So why do you want to continue to run a deficit? Just a question.
Well, our taxpayers are paying it either way. It's just whether or not we're paying out of the general fund versus paying it out of an additional property tax.
It's all, well, never
It
mind.
is-
It's all the same,
Yeah.
but
Is
You know.
all I'm saying, and so in calculating, and fine, it's not a flat rate, but just taking the under 5, most single-family homes, at the highest rate, though, they could essentially have, though, a $400 per year increase. That's a large.
That's a very large amount.
Increase. And some of these others, up to 400. This one's up to 800. 300. So those are pretty hefty increases. And what I think the entire time I've been on council, I think we've run a deficit on, yeah.
Yes, it's been running a deficit for quite a while. Yeah, and it just keeps getting bigger, of course, as costs keep going up. But yes, and if a phasing in approach is what council would like to go with, of course, we can take a look at those options, however many years.
And that's why it's
Yeah.
up, the 218, process, it lets the voters decide.
Obviously, I think there's a consensus in terms of a phasing
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
process.
But,
but I guess we just combating
I
about
still
the
have some
amount of years.
questions, I guess, yeah, in general.
That's
I
it, but that can
I
be
haven't had a
dealt with
chance to
later.
dig in and look at it more, so I'd love to.
Well,
dig in
how
a
it,
little more. Yeah.
and to Edward's point, what the difference between a 3-year phase-in and a 5-year phase-in would be, but as long as we got caught up, like I said, it's been many years, and we've been running a deficit for a long time, and taking that hit out of our general
And we've been talking
fund.
about it
Yeah, a long time, long time.
Do you-
So does that sound reasonable to bring it back for a discussion on phasing in? The
Yes.
phasing in of increases and obviously the overall 218 process.
Yes.
Yes. Just maybe 2 items I could ask as well. One, I don't know if it's possible, but this table, is there a way to compare that with the current,
Yeah, of course.
the current way we estimate and what?
Yes.
Okay. Just so I could understand
Right,
what
to,
the
and,
changes would
right,
be.
to have the,
Yes.
right, to have the current
versus-
ones, yes, yes.
And like that by I guess, by development unit, right? Is how it's, or dwelling
Yes,
unit, sorry.
Dwelling unit. Mhm.
Yeah. And then a question as well, just, I don't know how they, I mean, I know it's in this book and I haven't read it, but the cost there, but if there's other ways, we can always be creative to lower our costs on those sides. And I think we're doing one tonight, potentially, which is lowering the cost of our lighting cost. Is electricity included in this, or is it not? for those
Electricity,
lights?
yes, the utilities are included in that.
Right, okay, so there's one thing that we're gonna be lowering the cost on the lighting district by $1 million maybe eventually, but.
What about our policy on our landscaping? Do we have citywide standards for water efficient landscaping that would lower the costs also for the landscaping district portion of it?
So real quick, if I could, let me highlight a couple key points. I'll answer these two questions as well. One thing that I think is very important to remember when it came up about CPI. CPI is a factor that's typically used for contracts and amendments to contracts, but it's not necessarily a measure of actual costs for the city. So within those actual costs, we may see, things like insurance increases or things like liability premium increases or even settlements. We see electricity costs. In the case of like the LED discussion tonight, what's happening is you have a fixed cost today, and what Edison is going to do is they're basically going to say, we'll install LEDs, and the savings that is going to result, we're going to use those to cover the cost of all the new lights we're putting in. And the city will net an incremental difference of about, I think it's $75,000, which citywide, we spend over $2 million a year in electricity. So it is a meaningful difference, but, we still pay for it. I do think there's opportunity down the road where if the city does invest in lighting upgrades, we could see the cost of energy to come down. But there's an example of if the city were to have to fund all of the new light infrastructure upgrades, we don't have any reserves set aside to do that or money to do that. So I think kind of like your point earlier, the city's going to have to pay for the investment up front to achieve the savings in the end. We can certainly always look at our maintenance standards. We do have standards for public properties. There are standards for private properties. In this case of public property, how we maintain, we were very conscious during the drought to reduce water consumption, to fix leaks, to maintain properties where we could. The city had already undertaken a lot of drought-tolerant landscape projects around different city facilities. I think we can always consider more. That is part of the equation, but I think the bulk of these items are really in the fixed costs of sending out, tree trimmers and landscapers to fix, maintain, prune, trim, all those sorts of things. So I think we can certainly look at what the costs are, but I have a lot of confidence in staff that every year when we go through the budget, we're doing our very best to be prudent with the use of taxpayer dollars with or without the assessment.
And if I could just make a quick note too, the way the assessment district is designed is that each year we would look at the budget. So say we had the opportunity to save money and we needed less money, then we could adjust the assessment down. We just would never be able to go above the maximum, but we could adjust it down should we have an opportunity to save cost.
That's good to know. All right. You need anything further from us? Okay.
Great
And-
report.
Thank you for
Thank
great.
you.
for the all the work.
Like I said, as it was stated, we've been kicking this can down the road a long time. Okay, that will close our study session, and then, Mr. Steele, do you want to announce our closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. The members of the council will now adjourn to closed session regarding the one item on the posted agenda, which is a conference with real property negotiator, Government Code Section 54956.8. There are several assessor's parcel numbers listed on the posted agenda. The city negotiator is the city manager, and the negotiating party is Cleve B. Crudgington. Under negotiation is terms. Councilmember Belden will be recusing himself from the closed session due to a potential conflict of interest, and will report any action after the meeting.
Okay, and was there any public comment for this item? Not seeing any public comment for this item, and then we will close that, and we will adjourn then to, as Mr. Steele identified, adjourn to closed session, and we will come back out and report afterwards.